action after lunch, and really want to thank all the folks helping with the lunch and everyone here at Highline and the Southside Chamber. Thank you so much for getting all of us together for these amazing conversations today. My name is Shannon, Braddock, and I serve as the President and CEO of Greater Seattle Partners, also known as GSP, an economic development organization that represents Snohomish, Pierce, and King counties. Thank you, yes. I've been in this role for only 2 months, so it's awesome and amazing to be learning new things and really assessing things in a different perspective. And I love that we have some amazing leaders on this next panel who I also know that we are going to be learning from. So our fourth and final panel here is Strategy in Motion, Leading Through Change, which does seem to be ever present all the time. So I'll be moderating this conversation, and we have some amazing experienced executives who are going to talk to us about how they build resilient teams, how they align strategy with action, and how to lead with confidence through uncertainty, which in these times I think is an incredibly important asset. So whether you're leading a business or a nonprofit or a public organization, you'll really be able to walk away with some practical leadership insights that can be applied to the work happening. So please join me in welcoming our featured panelists, Kirsten, CEO of the Multi-Service Center, Garrett from 828 Consulting. I love that you all are in the hot seat, and I just need to ask the question. Amazing. But first, we're going to start with something easy, which is to again just sort of share who you are, your role, and really a strategic word or phrase that describes you or your style, I guess. Yeah.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lawrence Garrett, Chief Impact Officer for 828 Consulting. We are a leadership and performance management company. We do work in employee relations, business solutions, and workforce development. We are based in Pierce County, King. We've done a little in Thurston. So the word, that's a great question.
Or phrase.
See, okay, so she knows I'm a certified yapper. We know each other.
One word.
Yeah, so that's why she's hinting the one word.
Just kidding.
Yes. I don't have one word, and she knows that. Give me a second.
You're good.
Yes.
Go. Okay. Kirsten York. I am the CEO of Multi-Service Center. We are a community action agency that serves all of South King County. We're an anti-poverty organization, serving community with a variety of programs. My phrase for strategic leadership is center your why. And I will expand on it later, but I will.
Yes. I think what's important when we think of strategy is the word leverage. So that would be my word, leverage. At the core of what strategy is trying to accomplish is some form of leverage, whether it's your positionality, whether it's your insight, whether it's your awareness, whether it's the way you design a team. The idea is, how do I get the most by positioning things in a way that requires the least amount of effort?
Great. All right, well, the first question I have for you is, in these times when so many teams, they're very busy, they're very stretched, they're reacting to urgent things happening, how do you translate your big picture goals into daily action? We can start with you this time, Kirsten.
Okay. We're in a season of work and service to community that is not just ever changing, but really can be volatile and crisis oriented. And so having a vision that's very clear to everyone involved with common language is really important. Having values that we all can come along and align with. And often I have folks tell me they're sick of me saying this particular phrase, which is, who are we centering in this decision and why? Because when things get really big and overwhelming and the sense of urgency kind of can swallow you, and there are things that we cannot control, just considering who are we centering and why, and what are we doing in relation to our mission in community whenever we make a decision and however we create strategy.
I love that. I'm going to take a more personal approach on this for folks who are looking to be effective around change. And there's big ideas, concepts, and I'm trying to be effective today. Has anyone heard of this concept called the $25,000 formula? Anyone heard of that concept before? No? So I don't know who the research is and kind of where it came from, but it's this idea that really it's about 6 things that you can do every day, or 6 things you should focus on that makes the most impact on your work. And so think of it this way. Oftentimes, and this is a whole 7 habits principle, instead of, kind of prioritizing your schedule, you schedule your priorities. And so it's this idea of if you only could do 6 things today. Let's start with this. If you could only do 1 thing today that is going to have the most impact on your job, your work, your business, what would it be? Now, the challenge for most of us is we don't spend enough time identifying and writing down what is the problem. What is the problem I'm trying to solve right now? And so the clearer we can get about the problem we're trying to solve, because now we're talking about value creation, and I love Cheyenne, I miss Cheyenne, I don't know about y'all, but that was what I needed to hear today, and I missed that brother. But one of the things that stood out to me about what he was talking about as far as mindset and decision making was around this idea of where are we spending our mental space. And so there's a calculation that I think happens for people every day. It's this question of, is the thought and the decision I'm making right now, is it anchored in scarcity or is it anchored in abundance? Is it about innovation and change, or is this really a fear-based decision that I'm trying to essentially kind of lie to myself and make it sound like it's rational? So sometimes our rationality is just a rational lie, right? And so what happens, even with business folks sometimes, is that we will spend more time in being realistic versus idealistic. And I get that, that's natural. But it's really the ideals and the ideas that actually influence the real. And if you're about innovation and you're about change, you have to almost take a mental note of, is what's going on in my mind right now, is this a fear-based decision? Or is this an innovative, abundant decision? And I promise you, if you start taking like an audit on that, you will be shocked, especially now, how often fear is actually circulating why we're making the decisions we're making. Now, let me be practical about that, right? Sorry, do I have time?
You've got time.
Okay.
Keep going.
So what happens is when I say a fear-based decision, many of us, because we can feel the economy shrinking, right? One of the things that was asked earlier is that we have a K-shaped economy that's happening right now, right? K-shaped, what I'm referencing is, yes, there is huge economic growth that's happening for people who are in the market. So if you are heavily in the stock market right now, you're probably winning. Now, today wasn't good, but you're winning. But what does that mean for economic affordability for the average person? And people are feeling the squeeze. And because we're feeling the squeeze, our default is to think of what's the decision that I need to make today to keep my job. Let me ask you a question. If my default is built on what are the things that I need to do to keep my job, is that the best way to be innovative, a change maker, and a leader? No. And yet, we're almost kind of defaulting it on an unconscious level that we're not even really aware of. And so here's what happens. When we're linked in scarcity, and it's about job preservation, you know what else happens? We now start hiding information from our coworkers. We now start playing politics at our jobs, right? And we're dealing with all this internal turmoil about what is happening, right? In our organizations, and it doesn't matter, nonprofit, private, trust me, I'm in all of them. Fire departments, municipalities, nonprofits, higher ed, it's all happening. And what we're not distilling down, all of this, what you can say toxic workplace stuff that's happening right now, is really rooted in scarcity. And it's what is the way that I'm going to survive, and if that means I have to leave you out, I will. So, we got this.
I love it. Thank you so much for both of those answers. I have to say, the scarcity abundance really didn't enter my mindset until pretty late in I had a local government career for about 15 years. And for me, it was much more about how I was thinking about visioning, right? And I was thinking often from a scarcity mindset rather than that abundance mindset. And that shift has been remarkable and how I've been able to tap into more creative thinking. So I just very much appreciate the perspectives around that. And then leading back, Kirsten, to your first answer really in some ways, what we've been talking about is how we are responding, how we can focus and prioritize. But as things evolve and we must adapt, do you have some examples about how you keep that focus while allowing your team and yourself to adapt to changes around us?
Yes. So many examples of adapting. I think one of the things that I've seen, I've been in nonprofit work for 18 years. This last 18 months has probably been the most trying in that there is no stability and no clarity and also no pathway in which we are all following, whether it's the federal government's decisions around funding or state or local municipalities. I really resonate with what Lawrence is saying around scarcity. I think our funders are really scared that they are going to lose their relevance because their funding is changing, which then impacts all of us. And so when you're kind of at the bottom of that food chain, right, of a nonprofit receiving all of those funding that washes through so many entities that are really scared, we still have to center our mission, which is how are we serving our community? How we're creating access and equitability, how are we feeding people, keeping them warm, and keeping their roofs over their heads. And so when you're in a space of scarcity, we don't see the impact that we're making in a positive way. We just get scared. And being scared is clear and fine. So acknowledging, one, that this is a scary time, I think is really important. I think not saying those things out loud can create a space of like, oh, we're not in touch with reality. The reality right now is it is a scary time. And I think the second part is, as a leader who has to decide how I show up in my work every day, I have to decide how I establish collectivism, collaboration, and power sharing so that I am leaning into strengths of others and they can lean into my strengths, right? So things are hard, and acknowledging that up front I think is important. And also to not lose sight of all of the good things that we are doing, all of the people that we can feed. We are pushing out, a good example is that we have program funding that went away overnight, right? So we have a program that one day the feds decided they weren't gonna fund and they shut our portal down. We were reimbursement based, our cash flow stopped. So in preparation of that, I said, we're not gonna lose staff here. We have programming that's available to us to move them into. And you might not be trained to do that right now, but we're gonna train you, and you're gonna keep your job, and you're gonna keep serving community just in a different way in this small amount of time until we can go back to doing the work that you were doing. And if that doesn't happen, because that's outside of our control, right? We can't turn the funding on and off ourselves. We can just accept that it's happening. You still can serve community. And if that's not what you want to do right now long-term, that's okay. But our responsibility is to keep people safe and establish some stability and sustainability, even when the outside world isn't offering that to us.
You always answer really
so
comprehensively. We didn't go through our answers together, so we did talk though over it. A lot of what you said. I would go back to the duality of this is the moment where your values have to get clearer, but your strategy has to be more agile. And so a lot of times the challenge is they both kind of end up being in the same suit, but that's not what is needed at this moment in time. What it makes me think of, what are the core things that I've seen across organizations that allows people to do well? And I'll just give you my cheat sheet. When I'm talking with managers, directors, leaders of an organization, I'm looking for three things. I'm looking for, the first thing is, does this person show the propensity to be introspective and reflective about how they impact other people? That's number one. What is shocking to me, especially over the last 5 years, is the complete lack of self-awareness leaders have. I see the heads nodding. It's actually disturbing. The lack of relational intelligence. And there's a distinction in my world of EQ versus RI. So EQ is emotional intelligence. It has to do with my ability to be aware of my own emotional state. And what I see is I see leaders yelling and they don't think they're angry. And I'm sitting here like, do we need to film this? Do we need a mirror? And the challenge that I see is because no one's having the hard conversation with them. No one is telling them what you said and what you did and how impactful it was to the people in the room that would never say anything to you. That's number one. So I'm looking for people who are introspective and reflective about how they impact other people. Number one. Number two, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Now, I know no one in this room says, yeah, I got a fixed mindset. Who says that? No one. But the same way my coach challenged me, he said, here's the litmus test of whether or not you have a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Tell me the current book, class, seminar thing that you are invested in right now that's actually improving the way you live, work, and whatever. And you know what? In that moment, when he asked me that question, I had nothing to say. That's where he sent me this book called Leadership and Self-Deception. I was deceiving myself about being growth-minded, but there was nothing I could point to in my life that actually demonstrated that I had a learner's posture to still grow. This is the other part I'm talking about leaders. This is the impact we're having. We don't know whether or not relational intelligence and emotional coaching, we don't have that down, and I'm adding myself to it because I still need to do these things. And I think I have a growth mindset and it's really fixed because there's nothing I can point to that's showing how I'm trying to improve. Here was the third one. This was the big one. How well leaders take feedback. That is always my sign. How they respond to the assessment we're doing, the report we brought, the summary we gave, how you responded to that tells me everything. So it's always a leadership. Thank you. Stop.
Okay, I also have to, if you look at this slide behind here, it's talking about feeling empowered to influence decisions in your organization. I see only 18 people have answered. There's a lot more than 18 people in here, and I'm going to guess they fall in this maybe no category a little bit more. So going back to your word, Lawrence, leverage.
Yeah.
How can professionals who are still growing their leadership voice really learn how to affect influence when they aren't the final decision maker?
Yeah.
What are some ways that they can own that muscle?
I love that question. The first thing I would say is think of, you said emerging leaders, right?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's emerging, like young professional.
Based on one of your last answers, we should all be emerging leaders.
Yeah, confession. I'm in this weird space in life and I'm like, am I the young guy or the old guy? Right? Like, and I got the gray, so I'm clearly the old guy, but see, leave me alone. I'm working on accepting that I'm not part of the young professional thing anymore. So, yes, but to be more specific in regards to addressing the question, what needs to happen is for that emerging leader is to think of your boss's boss issues that you can help solve. So the first thing that's key is thinking about with the top level people in the organization, what problems are they trying to solve? What are the things that are on their docket? Because oftentimes when you're kind of lower in the organization, you're thinking about the task that needs to get done. And sometimes you're not thinking about the overall outcome that we're looking for. So the higher we can go up in thinking about what is my boss's boss, whatever, trying to solve and how can I be aligned to that, that's number one. Number two, I think, which is tied to that, is value is met when we solve problems. What I see generationally happening right now is there are, and trust me, I know I'm probably speaking as an ageist, all right? I run equity and inclusion too, so I realize what's happening here. So I'm not trying to down the younger generation, please. So here we are. I'm Lawrence, I'm your friend. However, what I'm sensing is the idea of folks believing that I'm well educated, I've learned these things, and therefore I should be situated to have this job or this money, but they haven't solved the problem. And so it's a matter of what problem are you solving actually that actually determines your value in the marketplace. So forget the degrees, forget the certifications, the credentials. The question you have to ask yourself, what problem am I actually solving? Because when I solve a problem, there's value creation is connected to future impact.
Great.
Yeah, I come from an industry where, none of us are getting promotions out of our innovative meeting ideas, right? We're coming into a space where we're solving problems for our community and serving clients. So I have a little bit of a different lens than Lawrence, but what I will say is I appreciate, and when I was in an emergent leader role, I needed to know my stuff. And I say that by saying, there's so many layers and parts of the work that we do and decisions that can be made. Coming into a space knowing your stuff is really important, like baseline. I think having a conversation around how you decenter yourself and the impact on yourself when you're advocating for something is really important also. Because it goes right back to who are we centering, who's benefiting from this decision, and why? And if the decision advocacy is happening because we need to center ourselves, then in nonprofit work, that doesn't really serve our purpose, right? So having a space to say in your brain and having the emotional acuity to say, how do I decenter myself in this conversation? And then considering the collective good, right? That our intent is to have a collective good within an organizational structure. How am I contributing to that when I'm making conversation and advocating for a decision, or maybe educating someone about something that they don't have time to know? That I hear a lot, right? Is how are we centering collective good? And then I'm gonna say this, and Lawrence is gonna laugh because he knows this about me, but I always will say that clear is kind, as Brene Brown says, but kindness can move mountains in wherever you are, right? We are all human. We all have humanity to contend with and deal with on a day-to-day basis. I think kindness and leadership goes a really long way in advocating for what you need and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Thank you. And in these times, I want to particularly acknowledge how meaningful that is. So thank you. Okay, we have time for one more question. So you all are obviously incredibly competent and amazing leaders, and I would love for you to share a time when a plan that you had as a leader didn't go how you thought it would, and what you learned from that, what you took from that experience.
Yeah, I can go on this one. Yeah, because I still feel it today. So prior work life, I was an exec director for a leadership organization, and this was my first big role, if you, the best way to say it. And I remember I noticed that there were folks on this board that agreed with what I was saying, and I said, okay, great. But then when it was time to vote, they voted a different way. And it was the first time in my life that I learned the difference between just because people agree with you doesn't mean they will support you. That was a very hard lesson, very early for me. And so what I would encourage the emerging leaders, the emerging leaders in the room is please understand the distinction between agreement and support. They're not the same.
I took a lot of notes, and this is the question I skipped because it is scary to answer, but I will tell you. I had a moment of years where I started to come around to awareness about something happening in an organization that I was in long ago. And I knew things were off, right? You ever get that feeling where you're like, this is not sitting with me? You go home at night and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, this doesn't feel right. And your little intuition, whether it's a little person or an animal or whoever you talk to, tells you like something's up, right? And so I made the decision to decenter myself and raise an issue that was going to cost me my job. And I said some really hard things to people that then, kind of elevated and rose to levels of decision making at the highest level of the organization. And I thought I had done the right thing. I thought I had advocated for safety, equity, security, comfort, clarity, and then it did not go the way I thought it was going to go, because I was in a system of power that I could not contend with. And the lesson for me in that moment was, this isn't about me, this is about where I'm planted, right? Sometimes you can do the right thing, you can step in the right places, you can work your butt off day in and day out, write every grant, contend with every fundraising goal, and you still don't have an outcome that is great. And so one of the lessons for me is, don't stay where you're not watered and you're not supported. Don't. Go somewhere where you are cheered on, where your values align, where your intuition is safe and rested at night. Because that is worth more than any other opportunity, paycheck, accolade, title, anything.
Yes. Yes. I feel like what's undergirding both of these messages here is this idea that I was really naive. I thought if you did the right thing, if you are about the mission and so forth, that everything was supposed to work out the way it's supposed to work out. And so what I didn't share the rest of the story that I think is connected to yours is that I didn't realize the people who agreed with me but didn't support me, they had ties to the other decision that was influenced by someone else. So in other words, it was politics. I didn't know that one of the people who voted against this was a chaplain, right, that was connected to the fire department of a person who was actually going against what I was saying. I didn't do my homework. Does that make sense? So oftentimes, you're confused about a decision because you're on face value, you're like, how does this not make sense? But I didn't know the backstory of the connections of what folks had and relationships and interests they had that I was not privy to. And so part of this discovery is recognizing what is the real motive and intention of the people in the room. Why are you really here?
And it is something that I carry to not recreate in myself as a leader, right? When you have an experience like that, what I think about is, how do I show up for someone else? Like, I needed to have someone show up for me in that time. And I carry that every day. Think about it every single day. In every hard decision, am I the leader that I would want to experience in this moment? And if that serves me, then it's going to serve my team.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I could stand here and listen to you all answer these questions all day. I want to thank you so much for your vulnerability and your wisdom. This has been fantastic, and I just want to have all of you join me in thanking our panelists.